Hi there, I'm Keith Cawley, and this is Thrive, a Bridgestone Americas podcast where we explore our company through compelling conversations with teammates across our organization. We love to talk tires here, and some of our past conversations have focused on specific areas of our core tire business, from our range of consumer products to massive off-the-road tires, even motorcycle tires we've spent some time discussing. But we realized we really haven't taken the time to focus on commercial tires, another big portion of the business, where honestly, there is a lot to talk about. When you talk about the evolution of Bridgestone beyond tires and into this digital solution space, the commercial group is at the forefront as it works with fleets of all sizes. Today, we talk to Steve Hoeft and Brian Cunningham, two leaders in the commercial trucking and fleet space at Bridgestone, to help us piece all of these puzzle pieces together. We hope you enjoy this conversation. Well, we are joined today here in studio by two leaders from a group, a business within Bridgestone Americas that is a significant part of what we do on the tire side, but a business that honestly now in a couple of years of the podcast, we haven't really spent a ton of time diving into, and that is the commercial truck group, the commercial TBR. We love our acronyms at Bridgestone. Truck Bus Radial Tires is a big portion of the core tire business, and we are going to dive into it today with Steve Hoeft, president of the commercial truck group from Bridgestone Americas. Steve,
Hello.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Keith. Hello.
And here in the middle is Brian Cunningham. Brian is vice president of Fleet Solutions Customer Success in North America with Bridgestone Mobility Solutions. Hey there, Brian.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're going to get into it. Fleet will be a word we probably say at some point, a time or two,
A few times
across the conversation. But indeed, there is a lot in this commercial world. Some that some people may think they understand or probably do know, but then other aspects that hopefully we get to uncover as we learn a little bit about the business. But as we always do, if you've listened to the podcast before, we love to start by learning about the individuals. So, Brian, why don't we start with you in the near? I'm told that you've been with Bridgestone 1 or 2 years, but what's been your career path to where you are currently and in your journey at Bridgestone?
Sure. So in 1997, I was hired in with a little company up in Muscatine, Iowa called Bandag.
Ah, we've heard, yes.
Yep. And I was working with Bandag for a good 10 years before Bridgestone actually purchased Bandag. And I've spent the last 16 or so years here in Nashville working for the joint, the entity that is one now as Bridgestone, and have held a variety of roles, all really in that commercial space, whether it be working with our dealers or working with the end users, our fleets. So it's all been around that. And then as I am today, and as I have been for really about the last 5 to 7 years, really working and organized around the fleet business that we do and how we bring success to our fleet partners.
Which is something that is continuing to grow in focus, not but just for Bridgestone, but the industry as a whole. We've talked about it in a couple of different ways, and I'm sure we'll hopefully share some familiar things like fleet care, mobility solutions, all of the language as we dive into
If
the
we're lucky.
conversation.
If we're lucky.
There
If
it
we're
is.
lucky.
And Bandag, as Brian said, that's retreading, which we've talked about on the podcast before, and another thing we'll talk about today that's a big important part, especially in the commercial area of the business. So. Steve, what about you across the table? What's been your background journey both at Bridgestone and beyond to this point?
I've been with the company about 7 years, and prior to that, I was in a number of different industries. Started off in the office products business back when I was in college, and through a number of different changes, I worked in that business, also worked in the auto parts business, and also worked in the with Brinks, with the armored car and money processing business.
And at Bridgestone, what brought you here 7 years ago, I guess?
So, great company. Actually knew a couple of people from a past life who had come to work here and to be a part of Bridgestone, both of which are still with the organization today. And it's just been a fantastic journey. I originally started with the company as the chief operating officer of our GCR business, which was our commercial service network, which we have since divested most of that in recent years, and then had a couple of different roles, and then ultimately leading to the opportunity to lead the truck group for Bridgestone.
There you go. And in the last year or two in that
It's been about a year and a half in this role.
There
yes.
you go. So a couple of guys who have a lot of experience in the industry now, and I think people in general, when they hear the word commercial, they get an idea in their head of an assumption, which is maybe tractor trailers, right? Which is not wrong, but it's maybe only the tip of the iceberg when we talk about the commercial space. So maybe if we ground everybody in the beginning on what is the commercial truck group, what is the commercial industry for tire, Steve, how would you describe that to somebody as who does the commercial group serve?
Sure. So, Keith, I think from maybe the easiest way to think about it is class 2 and 3 would be consumer cars, and then kind of light pickup trucks as you get into class 3, which is where Brian, as fleets are coming together more and more, is certainly working with fleets from, say, class 2 through what we work on as class 8. But primarily we're in the class 4 through 8, which on the lower end would be kind of last mile delivery, picture various companies delivering in your neighborhood, all the way up to that semi-truck, Keith, that you mentioned, the 18-wheeler.
Yeah. And we've had Rob Siebert on the podcast before, who gets into the OTR, off-the-road space, which gets into the really big stuff, which is mining and construction. So this is going from class 1 passenger cars, everything in between, up to that larger scale.
Yes.
Gotcha. Well, I think the other thing that is always a learning point for, at least for me when I first came, a lot of people come in and work in aspects that aren't in core tire, and you think, okay, there's a tractor trailer on the road. We sell a lot of tires. That's a lot of wheel placements for tires. That's a bunch of tires we can sell, and they're all the same, right? But I think we all have learned, if your time at Bridgestone, that tires are very complex. There's different performance attributes that different vehicles need, different industries need. Even on something like if we were to take an 18-wheeler truck, there's multiple different product types that we need to focus on. So you're breaking it down, Steve, by industry, but then when we talk about the types of tires that the industry needs, how do we break that down even further?
Sure. So we refer to it, Keith, as wheel positions. So with a classic 18-wheeler, the two tires in the front are referred to as steer tires, which is self-explanatory. That's what we do those two for.
Those are the ones that turn.
They
Fantastic.
steer the vehicle. And then the next 8, which would be the second part kind of in the middle at the back of the cab of the semi-truck, would be the drive tires that are very traction-oriented, so that they can move the up to 80,000 pounds that a semi-truck can weigh onto the road. And then last is a trailer tire, which pretty much just comes along for the ride. So in summary, you kind of have the steers in the front, a drive tire in the middle, and then 8 trailer tires in the back.
Yeah. And as you talk, Brian, you've been in this commercial space dealing with customers for a long time. Certainly there's different performance needs of each of those different positions, but you're trying probably to talk to people about this overall package. How do you approach helping businesses understand the differences and how all of that needs to be taken into account as you put the full performance of a truck together?
Well, and that's what's interesting. Steve did a good job of explaining what we call our TBR business, our truck, bus, and radio business, but that's changing.
Yeah.
And that's really the world I'm in. I'm in a spot now where what we used to call a fleet, a commercial fleet, really stretches across both our consumer business and our commercial business. So I get made fun of a lot because I say this, but I'm going to say it. A fleet is a fleet.
We're happy to also make fun of you. That's all part of the experience.
Steve does a good job.
There's a lot of deep philosophy here in this commercial truck business.
But in all seriousness, a fleet is a fleet. It doesn't matter if it runs 16-inch tires, 17-inch tires, or the OTR tires that Rob Siebert's group sells. So we're starting to see a real grouping together of fleets where they will not only have these large tractor trailers, but they'll also have pickup trucks and small delivery vans and everything that goes along with that. So we're really starting to see a growth in the different sizes of tires that a fleet, as we know it, uses. So having said that, it becomes a lot more information that we need to know as a sales team of how we can attack that fleet and show them lowest cost per mile with the different sizes. And there are many different sizes and many different SKUs, so it is a lot to stay up on top of.
Brian, you talked about what is, you simplify it and you joke about it, but a fleet is a fleet is a pretty good mantra to be clear and direct on people, right? I mean, this idea like we talk about where we did it a lot at CES, where you have potentially people think of fleets as all of these 18-wheeler trucks on the road that need to be managed together by one company, but it could also be a pest control company that has a group of light trucks or pickup trucks, right? a fleet is a fleet. It's multiple vehicles needing to be managed together by a central entity. There's a lot of different examples of that in the way that it's evolved, I guess, and in the way that Bridgestone approaches working with them and supporting them.
You're right, Keith, but you got to add one more, is a fleet in there.
There's a third
is a
is a fleet.
Is a fleet.
Is a fleet.
Three, yeah. So.
That's where the T-shirt went from the ... onto the back for the third fleet there, yes.
But it's very true. I mean, you know, there's a lot of examples where in the past we would think of a fleet customer as someone that would buy 19.5 size tires and above, you know. Today, we have many examples. I mean, if you look at one of the largest, if not largest, grocer in the U.S. is Kroger. Kroger has traditional tractor trailers that we're all used to seeing as commercial, but they also have a home delivery service now. And it's a home delivery service that's growing, that's using those smaller, you know, 16 and 17-inch tires. And, you know, they want to be viewed as one, and we want to solve their problems as one. So that fleet becomes everything, you know, where in the past we might have looked at that separately as two different companies. One was commercial, one was consumer. And, you know, with Fleet Care, we're looking at that as one. You know, there's many examples. UPS, Cintas, the uniform people, you know, they have big trucks and they have little trucks. And that's really what it's evolving to.
Steve, from like when you talk about the core commercial truck perspective, right? I think when we talk about the different business areas of Bridgestone Mobility Solutions is now an emerging area of focus where we've collected some of these solutions together. Core Tire continues to still be a key part of its own focus of providing the base element of a lot of what Fleet Care is around, which is the tire itself. How have you seen really the needs from even just the tire side maybe evolve over the last several years with the rise of fleets, or how you have to deal with customers even when it comes down to the base product of tires?
Yeah, there's a couple different elements I would bring up on that, Keith. And the first one is, one of the great parts about Bridgestone is we are what we like to call Dantatsu, or the clear leader in so many different spaces from a product point of view. So be it consumer vehicles, be it all the way up to the off-the-road vehicles that you mentioned from the OTR group. So we're able, as Brian kind of described, the old school conglomerate word almost comes to mind from a fleet perspective. So I think from a Core Tire perspective, we're almost uniquely suited to be able to bring terrific tires to all of the different segments that these given fleets have requirements for. And then from a Fleet Care point of view, we kind of go, kind of just beyond that foundation of a terrific tire, be it a Bridgestone Firestone or Bandag retread, to introduce some of the technology solutions, kind of some of the tire management systems, our Azuga business, some different things like that. And then ultimately we combine that with our commercial dealer network, which kind of brings you this three-legged stool of terrific traditional tire products along with technology solutions that are well serviced by the leading commercial network in the world.
Yeah, and we talk about Azuga or WebFleet, our fleet management solutions that we've actually talked about in different ways on the podcast. And I think those are the first solutions, quote unquote, for many maybe that come to mind, because we've been talking about them more as they increase, with Brian's point about fleets needing to manage in a central place all of these vehicles. What are maybe some other solutions side of things that maybe have been developed even a little bit longer in the Bridgestone house, but maybe versus fleet management over the last several years?
Sure. Let me take you on a journey.
I would love to. Yes, let's go.
Could you imagine if you had a fleet of vehicles?
I wanted you to open that with, in a world.
If you had a fleet of vehicles and you showed up in the morning and unbeknownst to you that overnight that vehicle alerted someone because of a tire monitoring system that this tire was going to go flat and was flat, in the middle of the night, automatically a dealer was electronically dispatched with no one picking a phone up, no one doing anything. That dealer came out, fixed that tire, and had it ready to go, and you came into your job at 6 a.m. and you didn't even know any of that happened, but you were ready to roll. And that's where we want to get, and that's where we're going with some of the tire monitoring we have and electronic dispatch and everything that goes along with it. So it's there, and we're at the forefront of it.
Yeah. What is, I guess, what makes me ask, when would we see that world? What is a realistic timeline for something like, because it seems very incredibly complex and it has to work very smoothly, right?
Sure. I think aspects of it now we're seeing today. We have tire monitoring systems now that monitor air pressure. We also have algorithms that will predict, when that tire could possibly fail or what that tire is going to do. We have electronic dispatch, but it's that whole I said I'd never use the word, that whole tech stack that I hear a lot of people use.
Well, it's actually
I don't know
two
what it
words
means.
there, as a matter
Yeah,
of fact.
2 words.
But
Well, that tells you how much I
we're
know
getting
about
very
it.
technical now,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, once you have that all connected, and that's really the challenge, is getting all of those connected. But we have a lot of pieces of it already, and we're using it every day already.
Yeah, well, and that the concept, right, of fleet care, I think, is a concept that we are going to be talking about more as we start to piece, honestly, different areas of this technology stack or the technology tool chest together. Because the other side of this, right, is that not every customer needs exactly the same thing. So how do you approach really from, I guess, what is fleet care in your mind when you're talking to customers who maybe have different needs, but a lot of them are also somewhat similar, right?
Yeah, I think it depends on the customer. I mean, we want to put all our customers in a certain level and think that they're all about total cost of ownership or their cost per mile. But the reality is some fleets aren't. They just aren't. They just want this solution and nothing else. And so we have to be agile enough to be able to give them that solution if that's the case. But we also have to be, intelligent enough to be able to show them the big picture, like some fleets do want. And some fleets do want all the tools that we have. So, I would define fleet care, in my world, is really bringing all those solutions together and using the ones that you need to use with certain fleets, and then packaging them all correctly for the fleets that want to go full bore on it.
One of the things that we're really looking to do too is we work very closely with fleets of all sizes, and Brian and his team are working with the largest fleets in North America, all the way down to a local fleet. And part of what fleet care is about, and bringing more and more technology together and kind of weaving it together, if you will, over the next couple of years, will allow us to work very closely with fleets of all sizes and kind of learn together and further evolve this total cost of ownership model that Brian's touching on, so that it all becomes more efficient for everybody, and which is really one of the most important ways that we differentiate ourselves in the marketplace.
The fleets that really want to get into this and co-create with us or develop something, those are the ones we do great with. And we have a lot of tools, and sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and the fleet doesn't either until we get in the room and start talking about those things. And the old "what if you had" or "what if we did this," those statements start to come out. You really get somewhere, and you really form that true partnership with the fleets.
Yeah. And there's a lot of kind of almost pioneering work, I might describe it, that takes place with the fleets. I also would want to bring into the discussion that we are working very closely with the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, on this kind of work, and we work with all the biggest of them to figure out how they're going to platform these various technologies and integrate them as a part of the vehicles for the years to come. So it's really all of the industry working together and co-creating, just to irritate Brian a little bit, but co-creating to figure out the right path forward. But we're getting very close, and we're learning a lot very quickly.
I'd add in on that. I mean, none of this is really able to be brought to market without the Bridgestone Commercial Dealer Network.
That's right.
Shameful plug, but I will say it. I mean, we are only as good as our dealers, and we have to bring them up to speed on a lot of this. And a lot of times they are ahead of us. They're ahead of us with their knowledge, at least, of what to do and how to do it. So they're a big part of what we deliver to our end users.
Yeah, a couple of things in there, right? Because we did talk to, I use Penske as an example because we talked to them at CES about some of the work done together. They are an industry leader that is also trying to find co-creation opportunities to pioneer, as Steve said, and we're able to test things together. They are far from the only one, right? That is to say we are working across the original equipment manufacturers. We're working across different areas of fleets and different areas of the commercial business with different great entities and leading companies to try a lot of these things. But I did have another acronym bingo of BCDN as a question to ask. BCDN is that Bridgestone Commercial Dealer Network that Brian has mentioned. Who wants to take it? But explaining in the base sense, what really is the Bridgestone Commercial Dealer Network?
So I think the way I would probably quickly describe the Bridgestone Commercial Dealer Network is it's about 2,500 locations from extremely large dealerships that will have up to a couple hundred locations, all the way down to those with just a few. And they are a mixture of our local Bandag plants where we do the tire retreading. There's about 200 of those around the U.S. and Canada where we do that kind of work. And they are available 24/7 to support fleets of all sizes, everything from a local fleet to some of the biggest nationals. And of course, Bridgestone does business all over the world. And they are an amazing partnership with us as Bridgestone, Firestone, and Bandag to take care of these fleet customers of all sizes.
Yeah, I'd add in there, a lot of people think that I only call on fleets and talk to fleets and our team. I would say we talk more to our dealers about those fleets.
Sure.
Whether we're working on a solution together, whether they're bringing up an idea. So they're a vital part of what we do.
Supporting the industry as a whole, product perspective, but then when they're out on the road moving, you've got to have. And I think it was interesting, Brian, you talked about bringing them. There's the changes in the industry. Everybody's kind of going through it together to some point, but you're talking to the dealers about the changes we're making as a company to support the changes happening in the industry. But I thought it was interesting, you said some of them are also ahead of the curve in the change versus us, right, as well. We've got to learn from each other. What are those relationships like with the dealers to say how much is a push, how much is a pull, or is that just another key example of co-creation but maybe in a different sense?
It is. I mean, I can give you an example. When we brought out IntelliTire, which is a tire pressure monitoring service that we put on the tires, one of the dealers came to us and said, have you ever thought about connecting that to this fleet's DVIR, which is their log they fill out before they leave in the morning? It shows, they check the vehicle, they check the air pressure, they check the fuel, and it dawned on us what a great idea. So now we're able to upload that information from our system directly into the program they use to make sure their vehicle is safe when it leaves. So if there's no air pressure, or low air pressure, I should say, in a tire, it would be identified. So it's that kind of relationship that really has helped us on a regular basis. And those conversations, sometimes they're not pretty conversations because, as I mentioned, we're only as good as our dealers. Sometimes our dealer might struggle in an area, and we have to have those discussions of how we can fix this together. But, it really is a key part of what we do.
The two-way dialogue there is important. As much as we need to help them come along, but there's also, we might not be doing our job to a great degree, and we got to be able to be honest about that. I guess the reality is so much of this is around digital connectivity, digitalization. We use that word a lot as well, right, across the industry, connected tires, connected systems, connected mobility. My experience in general, dealing a lot with internal teammate communications, and we're introducing new systems and we're changing the way people do things day to day. Change management is hard, right? And especially you have different people who are resistant to technologies, trying new things. It's a show me before I try to live it myself. Has a lot of this evolution been met with a lot of resistance? Or, I mean, I guess how does the commercial world break down from, do you have people early adopting to change, or is it kind of everybody along the same test and feel together? I don't know.
So I think, like with any group of people, it's a mixed bag to some degree. We have some of our dealerships are pushing very hard. Honestly, most of them are pushing very hard because from their point of view, it does a couple of things. The fleets of all sizes, and if it's one truck or 10,000, are all about uptime, not having unscheduled breakdowns. Those are terrible, right? They're bad in your personal life, they're bad in your commercial life. So we certainly, from a fleet perspective, they're pushing us. And then once there is a breakdown, it's inevitable, right, that it'll happen over time, is the faster we can get them up, which is actually measured to the minute. And we have some fantastic fleets who have pushed us very hard on that. JB Hunt, Brian, comes to mind as a tremendous partner who's helped us come along and probably pushed us and taught us some things that have made us better in a lot of ways. And then I think from there, on the technology side, the dealers need to get more and more efficient because, as we certainly have experienced over the last few years through the pandemic, the cost of labor of all variety has gone up a lot. And the availability is, just from a demographics point of view, going to be a challenge for quite some time. So the efficiencies and things that we can drive through the dealerships are kind of a pull to them. So I would say, on balance, we all have our shared desire to get technology driven through to all help all of us get better together.
And I think that's the beauty of Bridgestone. You know, we have long-term relationships with a lot of these fleets.
Yes.
And they tend, whether we like it or not, long-term relationship usually equals trust. And they trust us, and they want to see things from us, and they push us. And they'll be a little bit more trustworthy of trying things and co-creating things with us versus some of the customers that we don't do business with. So it's a constant evolution that we're trying to get in front of every fleet we possibly can and build up those relationships because in this industry, it does help to have a good relationship, obviously, with some of these big fleets.
The trust, but also then the expectation,
Correct.
right, is what comes with that. They expect you to be moving the needle forward and helping be that guiding kind of support system for them.
And I would say, Keith, to that point, we are not shy in this space. Bridgestone has invested tons of money in this space. And even more importantly, tons of organizational time and attention. And at the end of the day, we want to go and explore and figure this out together, and we are continuing to do that at an ever faster pace. And it's really starting to pay dividends in many aspects of our business.
Yeah. Well, I think part of my reason for kind of diving into a little bit of this, which might seem generalities to a degree, is I think that there's misconceptions, right? Like when we talk to Rob and Grok about the OTR off the road business, which is big mining tires. I mean, it's construction sites. It's things that you would think of as very manual, gritty, and potentially not tech forward. But the reality is, like, they're incredibly tech forward because of the investments, the money, the uptime that needs to take place at these things. It's no different in the commercial trucking industry. I mean, people see a big tractor trailer on the road and they think, oh, it's just moving down. There's so much connected technology that makes that possible at the largest scale that I just don't think people realize.
5 years ago, it would seem like every other word was tire. And many fleet calls we go on now, the word tire is never mentioned. It's about what systems do you have? What connectivity do you have? How can I get that data? How will that data help me? Will that equate into lower cost per mile? Well, that's what the conversations are about a lot of times now.
Because they trust us with the tires part, right? We're able to go from there and build upon that. Let's make sure that's also clear. Right?
If you didn't have that foundation where we truly were Dentatsu clearly leading in the space, you wouldn't be able to have that conversation.
Well, and that's why, I mean, like, I try to make this a connect the dots thing, but we look at our ABC business model and the bottom tier of that pyramid is the core tire business, and everything builds from there, right? So the trust, the understanding of what we're able to bring from the product perspective from a tire world allows us to really build upon that.
And I would say the thing we are also culturally, in maybe to pick 5 years like Brian just mentioned, we're also allowing ourselves to investigate, to explore, to fail, and to move on and to learn, right? Because that's certainly a part of tech as you go through the experience.
You mentioned EV trucking and autonomous trucking. The word enlighten is another, a concept that people are familiarizing themselves with at Bridgestone. We've talked about really enlighten on the consumer product side to this point because it's where it's come to market already with a couple of products where we've featured enlighten technology. But it's not just consumer, this whole approach. Enlighten will be in products on the commercial side. What do we see as an enlighten kind of approach moving forward for commercial in the tires, particularly as you talk about some of these trends that are taking shape with electrification, with autonomy and beyond?
I'll let you get into more of the details. When we talk to fleets about enlighten, it's all about how can we maximize that asset for you, which a casing is an asset. We want to retread that casing as much as we can. I mean, we have to come to market with a product that has to be retreadable and has a low rolling resistance that helps with fuel consumption, or we'll get thrown out. That trust will be lost that we talked about. So that's what enlighten is to me.
Yeah, well, and it's true. We had Scott Damon on, and he told us, right, there's two parts of enlighten. One is a business strategy, right, which is this idea in everything that we do. So to Brian's point, beyond individual product, this idea of maximizing sustainable impact, positive sustainable impact in the products and the operations and everything, as well as performance, keeping that performance at that same high level without compromising either side. that's what you're speaking to from beyond the tire, and then obviously there's stuff in the tire from a technology, a materials standpoint that we're continuing to look at performance and design wise.
Yeah, and I think in its at its most basic, Enlightened is an ever evolving and accelerating approach to building that casing that Brian was touching on. And rolling resistance in our world is critical. From two facets. One, from that total cost of ownership. You have an Enlightened tire, which we're bringing out, new products there all the time. We have, and we're continuing to over the next several years. But as you bring that lower rolling resistance out, that's how we really separate ourselves. You get the right rolling resistance set up, you can buy the tire 2 or 3 times over on your fuel savings during the life of that casing, which does obviously all the right things from a sustainability point of view, and certainly from a total cost of ownership or cost perspective. It's really helpful.
It's all coming together here. Bandag, where you started, retreading is an area we said we would talk about. It's been infused very naturally, a couple of points already in this conversation, but obviously a huge point in the commercial industry because of the number of tires. But I think we've kind of covered it. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about the importance or the dialogue around retread, but it is a central part of the conversations, and particularly the fleet space.
It really is. It really is. When you have fleets that are purchasing 15 retreads for every new tire they purchase, it's important, and there's a reason. And it's around that total cost of ownership. And these are the fleets that really are looking to drive cost out of their operations. So it is a key part of what we do in our package of value, and a big part of fleet care.
Yeah.
And I would, just the one thing to throw in is, you kind of mentioned that it's kind of been interwoven, I think you said, Keith, but retread is an intrinsic part of the commercial fleet business.
Yeah.
You could not find a large fleet that does not retread. It is just an absolute part of the business. The economics are terrific. The sustainability is terrific. That's a pretty cool value proposition that all of the big fleets buy into in North America.
Yeah. We always like, as we kind of wrap up, is to look forward, and we've kind of done a little bit of this already with Enlighten and the idea of the evolving digital tech stack of solutions with fleet care. But what's on the horizon that you are maybe excited about? Like what's coming over the next, we talked about the last 5 years, drastic change. Maybe Steve, from your perspective, and then Brian from yours, what do the next 5 to maybe 10 years look like in the commercial industry?
So I'll maybe take it, Brian, a little more from a dealer perspective, and
Sure.
you grab the fleet side a little bit more. But I think from a dealer perspective, we're making some sizable investments in call it the connectivity from a technology point of view with all of the dealers across our network over the next 2 or 3 years, which is going to leapfrog the industry from a supporting technology point of view to take care of our fleets across North America. And then when you combine that with the technology products coming together as well, it's going to be a really exciting 3 to 5 years. I don't think we have to get anywhere near 10 to really see all of this coming together and really changing the industry in a fundamental way as we kind of get toward the last part of this decade.
Yeah.
I won't have to worry about 10, so we don't have to talk about that, that's for sure. In the next 1 year, no, I'm just kidding.
I'm concerned about the next 3 months. That's all we can look at right now, of course, yes.
I mean, it's all exciting. It really is. I mean, the fact that Bridgestone is investing in this technology and is part of it. I was just in a workshop with our Azuga folks and some of the folks from Europe that are in the Bridgestone Mobility Group, and the excitement and the ideas of how we can get better and what we want to do is so important to what we're doing. And it excites me because I don't like to lose. I mean, I'm a pretty competitive guy, and to sit in front of a customer and have a customer tell you that you're probably not the best technology company. There's other companies that have a little bit better, whatever it may be. Your tire's great. That doesn't feel real good. And I think we're taking that to heart, and we've made a lot of strides, and I would say we're not the worst by any means, but we have some ways to go to be the best, and that's what excites me, is that we're going to be on the top.
And I would add to that, this road that we're on over this next few years, it is so completely aligned with our E8 with the Bridgestone essence, with all the way back to our founders in the 1930s, right, serving society with superior quality. That's really what we're doing here, and that's what's really exciting is we're actually bringing the corporate strategy to life and leading our industry at the same time, and it's a pretty exciting period of time that we're in.
We like to connect those dots, right? You've got extension, you've got economy, you've got energy, you've got ease in the way that the dealer network helps support
Certainly
people.
Ecology.
Everywhere in there around the circle for the E8 commitment to connect those dots. Well, it was great to learn, I think, a little bit more on my side, certainly about the different aspects of a fleet is a fleet, as well as just where the commercial business is going, right? I think, again, I try to look at this from the view of maybe simple assumptions that people have that aren't necessarily wrong. They're just not complete. And so to be able to fill in the gaps around some of these things is incredibly helpful for me, at least, and I hope incredibly helpful for our listeners as well. And maybe you two learned a little thing along the way. I don't know. Maybe not. But you guys are the experts here.
We're always learning.
Always learning. That's the approach to take. Only for a couple more months or years for Brian.
and
then he's shutting it down.
And slowly. Learning slowly.
But Steve, thank you so much for taking the time. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.
And Brian, thank you for coming by. It was great to have the conversation with both of you.
Thank you very much.
So a fleet is a fleet is a fleet is a fleet. Hopefully, this chat shows how some traditional thoughts and assumptions about industries like commercial tire are continuing to evolve, and how Bridgestone is working directly with our customers and our dealers to continue meeting and exceeding the needs for this future of mobility. If you like this chat, be sure to listen to some of our other conversations, wherever it is you listen to podcasts. And remember, you can also watch episodes on our Bridgestone YouTube page. Wherever you do hear us or watch us, feel free to give us a rating or a review to tell us how we're doing. And you can always send a question or feedback via email to thrivepodcast@bfusa.com. Thanks for listening. I'm Keith Cawley, reminding you to keep on keeping on. And remember, at Bridgestone, today, tomorrow, together, we thrive. Be good, everybody.